Thank you very much, Nesson. I'm going to be walking around and pointing over the next 25 minutes or so. And I've been asked to talk about the global inkjet market. So I'm not going to be techie at all. I'm not in the category of integration. I'm going to be talking about the market, the end-use applications in print for profit, packaging, and then outside that in industrial decorative markets. I'm going to be sharing some Smithers data, and I'm going to be talking about some new and developing technologies, which many of you may know, many of you may not know. I'm then going to start talking about some of the key applications and where I think it's going to go to over the next few years, and a little bit of why. And it's beyond, I say, the graphics and packaging. So Nesson seems to have spent some time introducing me. All I will say, it's over 25 years I've been involved in this. It says Smithers Pyre there. I must learn to not call them Smithers Pyre anymore. It's Smithers, but it'll take me a while to sort of get my head around that. And I've been involved in inkjet for quite some time as an end user of it at printing companies and talking to brands and publishers and various other people that buy print, why they should be interested in inkjet, as well as working with a number of key suppliers. As well as my activities with Smithers, I also act as a journalist. I write for various trade presses, and I occasionally even get my fingers dirty as a non-exec at some real printing companies. So the technology in inkjet is a very broad church. It does lots and lots of things, lots and lots of differences. So the first thing to remember is the inkjet market isn't a market. It's a continuum of different markets doing different things that just so happen to be non-impact printing, where ink is ejected from nozzles, and not always from nozzles in there. So you have wide format. These are scanning, traversing head devices in textiles, in flatbed. There are hybrid roll-to-roll machines. Lots and lots of things that the technologists really love. Web-fed, high-speed single pass being used in packaging. In the fastest machine I've seen so far, the T1170 from HP. That is the equivalent of about 8 Heidelberg Speedmasters running at full speed 24 hours a day. Inkjet is not a toy. Inkjet is mainstream, and it's changing the way that printing companies and packaging companies think about their production needs. But critically, it's changing the way they can serve their customers and help their customers serve their end users, which is why the printing sector exists in there. Sheet-fed single pass, indirect inkjet, so we're not printing onto the materials, we're printing onto a transfer medium and pushing it through. Solves a lot of problems, creates some other problems. And then there's the other really weird and wonderful stuff that doesn't fit into any of the other categories. And we track all of these things in terms of values and volumes. And I spend my life wandering around, normally at Heathrow Airport, seeing what is happening. And 2019, I thought, was going to be quite a quiet year, because we've got drupa next year. Drupa is the Print Olympics, and everyone shows what they're going to be bringing to market. But this year, there was one or two things that were interesting happened. And the first one is the Hunkler Innovation Show, which is for continuous feed inkjet. Well, that was what it was aimed for. Sheet-fed is getting in there now, and there are some other examples in there. And there were 3 machines, one from Ricoh, the VC70000, one from Canon. I still regard them as OSE, but I must learn to call them Canon, which is the image press, and one from Xerox, the Trevor 2400 HD. And what these did is these can print onto coated media, very high speed, very good quality. Why is that important? Well, it's important because it opens up new applications. And I cannot tell you how much these applications are critical. Because what this does is this opens magazine printing. It opens high-quality commercial print to high-speed inkjet. And it couldn't do it before but it can do now. And so there are virtually no limitations to the potential quality of output. And it's on standard paper that print companies know and love and buy all the time, that they don't have to treat or they don't have to buy special material for it. It makes it far more affordable. That'll boost the volumes up. So that was in February. There was also the CCA conference, corrugated and cartons. Engeco, an Italian company, they demonstrated a single-pass fan-fold corrugated machine. Another single-pass device at the corrugated market. You don't have to be huge, big, massive organization with the marketing resources of some of the big boys. You can be a tiny company. Some of you from Germany may recognize Mark Demperer. He's an ex-professional footballer. He's a US guy who's stayed in Germany because the lady there is now his wife. And he's selling box engineering, box on demand, very simple, very low end. Can't make enough of them to sell to e-commerce vendors to print their boxes when they sell things over the web. You have Zycon, one of the bastions of toner printing, moving into inkjet with their series of machines. I went to Uteco, a company that make very, very good flexo and gravure machines. This is a hybrid machine, putting Kodak inkjet material on it, the Sapphire Evo. They've sold 5 of them. This is printing onto plain film products at 200, 300 meters a minute. One of them is going into a company in Japan to make diapers. You're printing directly onto nappies. These things are going to be far more stringent for direct skin contact with your baby than the people who make inks for food regulation. So, not a machine, but I think a very significant proportion is Memjet. And this is the Duraflex print head. Why is that important when I'm talking about machinery? Because of their ability to integrate this into a range of equipment that can add printing capability with pigmented inks at reasonable speeds, at reasonable performance, and at relatively low cost. And they shared their pipeline of potential users. I think at Drupa next year, if you sort of go on a booth tour of Memjet technology inside, you'll be quite surprised how many there are. And that's the head from the different angle, of course. I've just recovered, or I'm recovering from Label Expo. Interesting to see some new vendors coming in, or new to me anyway. Hanglory, yet another narrow web inkjet press. Miyakoshi, yet another narrow web inkjet press. This is Nilpita, who are a flexo powerhouse based out of Denmark. And they're adding high opacity white, high build varnish for tactile embellishment applications as a part. The print bar is here to stay, relatively easy to integrate onto machines, adding a significant amount of potential added value to the customer base. New solution engineering out of Portugal, another Memjet, or one of the first Memjet machines. This is the Gallus SmartFire. You might find it looks a bit like that one. Well, there's a very good reason it looks a bit like that one, because it is that one. But this is Gallus using Memjet technology in there. Out of India, Monotech. So they claim they've sold 4.5 of these. I'm not quite sure how you sell half a machine. It may have been a translation. But an Indian company starting to develop and sell internationally inkjet technology. Amica Systems, another Memjet device. Bobst. They got burnt with inkjet very badly, but they're back with MoveOn. This is a hybrid machine. Capability of this is it'll run at 100 meters a minute, 2400 DPI if you want it to, 1200 normally it's slightly lower speed. They put a video of this up. This ran 25 kilometers of labels in a shift. HP have just been doing a thing with their Indigos, and their winner ran 6.5 kilometers of labels in this shift. High speed, high performance, low cost. And these are sort of being proven by label converters in the field. And there's Jean-Pascal Bost in front of the Mouvon engine. This is a UV label press, capable of running at 100 meters a minute, 1200 dpi. This is a water-based label press. There isn't much water-based in label printing, but there soon will be for a very good reason on there. You have baby machines. This is an Affinia pouch maker. I'll come away from the getting my feedback loop going, producing pouches. But that whole system costs less than £20,000. So if you want to get into short-run pouch making, here's an entry for you, particularly as companies like Seal are now producing the right materials and coating them and making them compatible. You have Rigoli, another company, wider now. This is a 1.1 meter wide inkjet machine for flexible packaging, a lot lower cost and a similar performance level in terms of square meters per hour to some of the market leader in the toner sector. Going to have a big issue, big change, I think, in applications. Outside of there, this is Xerox's new Baltoro inkjet machine. It looks a bit like an iGen press, if you know that model. And there's a very good reason for it. It uses a lot of the controls out of the very successful iGen presses, but with an inkjet sort of market on it. And this is from this morning. I'm not quite sure who DG Italia is, but I got an email through. This is a new blister pack inkjet printer that they've sold into a company in Greece. And that was this morning I found out about this. The other thing that I thought was interesting to me is I was at a Xerox event and they put up this. And this is 3 pictures, 3 pages, 1 printed inkjet, 1 printed with toner, and 1 printed with offset litho. And they said, can you tell the difference? Of course I can tell the difference. That's what I do. But they wouldn't let me touch them, and they wouldn't let me take a glass and look at them in depth. The average result is people get 40% of these right. I got 11 out of 18, and I was distressed. It works fine. And as soon as it does that, it opens up new areas. And you're seeing it in commercial, information, packaging and labels, corrugated. All of these sectors are growing because the quality is okay. It's fine. And the conversation has changed from what inkjet can't do to what inkjet can do. Because the sectors that use printing are under pressure. They have to really delight their customers, who have to delight their customers. And inkjet can help them do that in new ways. So we look at some print market data. These are in constant US dollar terms, and I split the inkjet applications to everything. And I couldn't get it neat because it's quite a complex area. But the thing to look at is inkjet for print for profit is dominated by mailing, that's direct mail and transactional mail. It's dominated by indoor and outdoor post-POS signage, the display, the Viscom sector in value terms. The bit at the top there is the packaging side. It's a pretty small chunk of value. And then you have publications and commercial print in that area. And that's value. Value is the important thing. Volume, it's a very different shape. You'll see much more of the transactional and direct mail volumes because it's relatively low cost. A lot of it's black and white. There's quite a lot of books in there. Again, many of those are black and white. You can barely see the packaging bit. The corrugated is starting up for this year. And commercial is starting to grow now, where you've got a range of forms and various different applications in there. And we look at these things in a lot of detail, and we spend a lot of time trying to prove that our assumptions are correct. Before we publish reports, we tend to lose some of the granularity. and we put it down. But if you then plot how these applications are changing over the years, in value terms, the blue line at the top is the overall print for profit application. We reckon it's a bit north of $80 billion. It's significant. And it's going to grow to 115 in 5 years' time. You can't really see a huge amount of detail in there, so I'll open it up a little bit. You still can't see a great deal of detail in there. But you see markets rising, and this is what gets vendors of equipment and inks quite excited, because there aren't. We think it's going to beat the trillion A4 prints this year. Is that significant? Well, remember that the overall market is about 50 trillion, so you're less than 2%, maybe going to about 3 or 4% in 4 years' time. $120 billion is about 16%. It's value. That's what the companies that are thinking about buying inkjet presses are after. They're after value add. They don't want volume. If you want to get a really low-cost method of printing lots and lots of things, well, we've got loads of those. It's called analog printing. And there's a little bit more detail of the individual areas and how they're going to grow. So we look at that in a slightly different way and look at some growth rates. Now, magazine growth rates of 85% over the last 5 years sound rather exciting, but it's because it was 0 before that. So relatively low growth rates. Photo books have been around, photo products have been around for a long time, so they're obviously a lot lower growth rates. But the total we're talking about has been about 7 years, but all of them growing. They're all taking market share away from analog, and the digital vendors all talk about analog to digital conversion and transition. And they're all going that way, but there are also new applications, new customer groups, new market sectors involved in there. This is in volume terms. The key thing to note here is the volume is higher than the value, so we're going to be, or the printing industry is going to be taking some of that value, and the customers are going to be taking some of that value as it grows and transitions. So what else is happening that's significant? This is Yashi Amir, who is the CEO of Landa. It's not Benny. If Benny was talking, you wouldn't hear too much of what's going on in the background. That's their known and installed base of the Landa presses. There are 14 on there. They signed another one that day to 15. There's actually 21 of them, including a couple of web machines, but they won't talk about those publicly. There is still some slight issues with the quality, but they're solving them. And on the right-hand side, that's me taking a photo micrograph, and that's the worst example of misregistration I could find on a Landa sheet. The one on the left, can't really see that, but take my word for it, is actually good registration, and that was from the Komori version, the NS40, which is now coming to market and going to the first area in there. Why is Landa important? Because it's ramping up. They have the capability now in Assembly Hall 2, and that is Assembly Hall 2, of producing dozens of machines a year. And there are 3 of them. And on the other side of the hall, there's another 2 of them. They're about to break ground on Assembly Hall number 4. Assembly Hall number 4 will come on stream next year, and at the end of next year, they will have the capability of producing hundreds of machines. Will they work? Well, this is a group of people. These guys here have used Landa machines. It's Mercury Communications, it's Graphica Bezalel, it's Virtual Packaging, and it's Edelman. The guy beside me, you may find it hard to believe that that's me, but you can see the camera does lie, and I'm not really quite that fat. But Edelman is probably the most impressive carton manufacturer I have ever been to, and I've owned a few of them and worked in some very big ones. They know what they're doing. Oliver Sattel is the MD there. He says, well, I probably wouldn't use it for Chanel, but for Chanel, they will use litho, 14 colors, and a minimum of 3 blacks. But for a lot of other stuff, they will use it. On the other side, we have that's quantum communications. Cheryl Kenneher out of Chicago. She literally just signed to buy one of their presses before, which is probably why she's looking a bit shell-shocked. Philippe, this Blue Tree, and that's Roger Zhao out of ZRP in China. They're all positive about it, even when they're talking not in the public domain. It's going to change, we think, the way a lot of the market is going. They're using those presses in packaging, and they're going to be using them, in commercial print, but also in packaging. And if you plot the technology map, because I like technology map, labels and packaging, huge opportunities here. Lots and lots of names and different things in the label market. Pure inkjet, an inkjet hybrid where they're using flexo. In some cases, they're now starting to use toner. If you wait a minute, you'll get a shot of everything because I'm going to fill them in one at a time. You then move into corrugated. Strong, interesting sector, really radically changing, getting high volumes. There'll be a full picture of it in a minute if you just wait. And you can have this anyway, so, in there. Cartons, sheet-fed and web-fed. Gallus, significant player in labels, you might think, significant player in cartons now, and I'll talk about them in a moment as well. Flexible packaging. Well, there would have been another name on there if I could have adjusted this, the one that I found out this morning. You're getting rigid printing. You have flatbed glass. It's now complete if you want to take your pictures. In there. Lots and lots of names, lots and lots of interesting things sort of going on there. As all this technology is coming along, people are picking it up and moving it. But it's not the technology, and I'm a techie. It's the business benefits. Can you do it more quickly, more cheaply, more relevant, more interest? More of what we, and by we, I'm talking about civilians. I'm not talking about printing techies. I'm not talking about people that manufacture equipment and stuff. End users, real people. Do they want what inkjet can give? Because if they do, it'll work. If they don't, it won't. It's all about the applications. It's about nothing else. Technology is irrelevant. It's the applications. And here's an application. And this is frozen yogurt from a company called Yasu. Yasu is an upstart brand. They were started in 2009, and they were $50 million in 2017, which is why I started paying attention. And they launched an e-commerce pack, so you can get frozen yogurt over the web now. And they gained publicity by printing a digital box. So where it says Bustle meet Yasso, well, Bustle is a magazine. And they sent these boxes out to a range of food titles and influencers and TV and radio journalists, and got a huge amount of media coverage, lots and lots of new customers, and they launched their ice cream over the web as a direct result of them being able to use that box as a tool to generate publicity. And people are using applications in different ways, and and what packaging is for, and it's not just containment, and it's not just protection anymore, can be enabled by inkjet, and that's one of the reasons we think it's going to grow. Huge amount of innovation in direct-to-shape printing. And it's not just direct printing. So this is the pad jet, the one on the left-hand side, the right-hand, that side. Is ITW Morlock, printing with inkjet onto a pad, taking that pad off and using it to print the items, and then throwing that membrane away, putting another one on if they want to change the variety. So it's not just direct printing, there's indirect printing. You have bottles here. That might be quite exciting for you. A very prestigious bottle of cooking oil, motor oil, enabled by Owens, Illinois through their OI expressions capability. Not quite sure how much that would cost, but I suspect it won't be going into my car. Now, many of you on Saturday were watching England destroy the All Blacks. And if there are any New Zealanders in the audience, for once I'm going to boast over it. And you may have missed this, but this is AB InBev. Beck's. And they launched a direct-to-print, the first high-performance, high-volume market for direct printing that I'm aware of on Beck's beer. And this is tattooing bottles. It's actually inkjet printing bottles in there, and they're going to cut the waste of paper behind it. Now, I'm not sure if the economics of direct-to-object stack direct printing, but this is a major brand doing it. I happen to know about the system that they've installed in there. It's a significant investment, and they're determining whether or not it's going to be a good idea. A new set of applications, opening new things. How am I doing for time? Sorry? Okay, right, he's not shouting at me. And I think as well as the applications, we're going to see changes in supply chain. And this is a supply chain. I wouldn't get too excited by it. At the top, it has design. You then print, convert, take the pack, put it into a packing line or a manufacturer, goes into a retail distribution chain, onto the shelf, hopefully bought, and then you now have internet ordering in that. The only thing that everyone agrees on is it's far too complicated, too many stages, too many players, too much time, too much cost, too much waste. But retail is changing. And we all use e-commerce, and we're all doing different things. But if you put a digital press into that line, you don't change that supply chain. You might save plate making, and you might save some, get a sustainability benefit. You might not, in there, but you don't significantly change that supply chain. But it could do, because the technology is not like a litho press. It's not like a flexo press. It could be simpler. I have started and printed a T1100 from HP. I pressed the button. They remind me to press it again, and the machine started. I would have had a great deal of difficulty doing that to a 6-color, 2-meter wide flexo machine. It can change location. If you put the digital print at the manufacturer, you're taking out a whole raft of time and effort and cost. If you put it in at a retail distribution chain, not necessarily saying you put it into your local supermarket, but maybe the people that supply your local supermarket, or you put it into an e-commerce warehouse. There's some interesting things we heard yesterday, if you were in the various things, about Amazon and what they're doing with textiles and garment printing on demand. What they're doing with packaging on demand is mind-blowingly interestingly in there, because it helps you get closer to the customers. And for an organization that happens to be a retail distribution chain or an e-commerce provider, you can start changing your print into a revenue generator rather than just a cost. And this is happening with Philip Morris. Philip Morris, biggest, well, I don't think the biggest cigarette manufacturer in the world. I suspect they probably aren't, with some Chinese ones. But they have an issue. And when they launch a new product, 2 SKUs, 6 GTPs, good to print, and it takes them 4 months when they decide to launch a new cigarette. It takes them 2 years to roll out 2 products. Well, they've decided to go away from burning tobacco, and they're going to heat tobacco in their heats. And the new product launch is now a little bit more complicated. 100 SKUs, 100 GTPs, and they want to do it globally, and they want to do it instantly. Well, they can't do it the way they currently do. And what they're looking at is putting an inkjet printing line. And they bought a Gallus label press, configured it to print cartons, and put it into Neuchâtel in Switzerland in one of their development sites, and validated the concept in terms of color, 8 color. You have your Marlboro Red. I know who makes it, even though you won't tell me. You there, putting it through to change their go-to-market. At Label Expo a couple of weeks ago, they announced they've now got 4 of those lines, 2 of them in Romania. Tony Schneider, why? It gives them agility, time to market. They're not going to be putting high-performance flexo machines into their factories. I'll shut up in a minute, don't worry. Outside of printing and packaging, industrial printing, another $15 billion rising to 25, and I'm not even thinking about 3D printing in there. In decor, ceramics, printed electronics, glass, textiles, promotional items, giveaways, and other things. Growing significantly because it does things and eases supply chains. And those are some volumes in terms of square meters. Significant business getting there. And it's because of what everyone in this room does that this is enabled. But the people that buy these don't care about resolution. They don't care about things. It has to be good enough to print, it has to be reliable, and I don't really want to kill all of my customers, so it has to be safe and meet all regulatory requirements. And they're not that worried about the benefit of 720 or 1200 DPI. They don't care because they're real people. What they're looking at is what they can see, hold and touch, sell and make money out of. So, what does all this add up to? Generally, pretty good news, generally very positive, lots of good opportunities in packaging, and I think we're going to see some really good, interesting ramp-ups next year. And when I talk to various providers, I think they're going to start re-evaluating their whole business process. So what's actually really happening is that Inkjet is no longer at its awkward adolescent phase. It's actually starting to grow up. It's significant. It's real. It's not a toy. It's a business decision. Do I never buy another gravure press or another offset press? That is the question that companies are asking themselves. And also some of the manufacturers are asking themselves, do I ever build another one of these, or do I put my money somewhere else? It's growing up and it's mainstream, but it needs to realize that and act like that. So it can't post those stupid, rather endearing selfies it did when it was a very young teenager, when it's an old teenager. They have a totally different meaning, and that's where we are with Inkjet. So I'm not quite sure how I'm doing for timing, am I? But I'm going to now finish. The last thing, as everybody else has said it, so I'll say it as well, there's a Smithers thing out there. There's the significant event. If you don't know it, I would certainly advise you to take note of it. The Digital Print for Packaging event, which is coming up next month in December. Must attend event, according to Matt Daniels of Unilever. Not quite sure what we had to do to make him say that, but there we are. So thank you very much indeed for your attention.